here's a question then. So many of our listeners today work in HR, just like you did. How can HR as a function, as a leadership team, influence this in the business, and what does conscious leadership practically mean in the real world? What can they do differently today after this call? And by the way, for anyone listening, if you've got any questions, if you want to start thinking about them and popping them through, then we'll make sure that we get Natasha's time to answer them before the end of the call. But there you go. Sorry.
You don't do what I did, which is basically just criticize the leaders for not being good enough. I mean, towards the end of my tenure in my role, I was just telling the leaders that they needed to change. You just need to change. No, it's behavior that is getting in the way of us achieving more. And of course, nobody wants to hear that. And actually, I think, you know, I've developed some more humility on my journey to consciousness. Like, most of us are good people doing bad things. You know, this isn't bad people doing bad things. This isn't, you know, leaders who are just arses showing up and not caring about anybody. And actually, I think the pandemic proved that we were able to be nicer to each other for a while, whilst we had the permission to do it.
Yeah,
I think that this is a consequence of being overworked, overwhelmed, pulled in all sorts of directions, having to deal with all sorts of politics in our organizations, having to pivot to a significant amount of change that are constantly, you know, is constantly happening. And I think that blaming the leaders for not doing the right thing is the wrong starting point, because actually they're just humans who are coming to work trying to do a good job. So I think there's an awareness raising piece, which is leaders are going through a particularly tough time right now, the perfect storm of lots of change, which, you know, that's no different probably for most organizations, with dispersed teams, with a heightened expectation about how we lead. You know, suddenly the focus is on the leaders. We're now saying, oh, you as leaders need to create inclusive environments where people have a sense of belonging, where we build psychologically safe teams, where people's mental health is being supported. You know, an average leader is probably like, sorry, say what? Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know. I'll be nice. Like, I'll ask, are you okay? Like, are you okay today? Yeah, okay. Oh, no, you're not okay. What do you got too much work on? Okay, we'll move it over to Jill. But actually, I just don't think leaders understand people enough to be able to respond to that. So, and I also don't think they understand themselves enough. So I think there's a bit of give leaders permission to take care of themselves, give them permission to role model healthy behavior. You know, they are humans. They do need to maintain their own energy. Recognize the fact that this is a learning curve for all of us, and that there are some changes in the workplace. There is a changing expectation of how we lead, and so we've got to figure that out.
And it's almost asking leaders what they need as well, isn't it? It's leaning into it rather than just assuming. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot in the surveys that we're running now, is like, let's be there and let's get some tangible data back so we understand what people need as well. And often it's the language that we use. You know, we can throw around things like, oh, it's really important to build an inclusive culture.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Yeah. What does that look like in the context of our own organization? And what do we need to be doing to bring that to life, to make that a living and breathing thing across the organization?
Yeah.
So I think just asking those questions is so important.